The origins of the Mande. Long before the name Mali echoed across the sands of the Sahara, there existed a land blessed by nature. A land of hills, rivers, and fertile plains known as the Mande. It lay between the Senegal and Niger rivers, home to a proud and hardworking people, the Mandinka, or Mande people. A land blessed by nature. The Mande was a region of savannas, forests, and shimmering rivers. Its people cultivated millet and sorghum, raised cattle and sheep, and traded salt, hides, and grains with neighboring kingdoms. Thanks to its rich soil and abundant resources, the Mande became a crossroads of prosperity, a place where different tribes exchanged not only goods, but ideas and traditions. United by language and tradition. The Mandinka people shared a common tongue and a sacred moral code known as the Mandan. This ancient code was built on solidarity, honor, and respect for the elders. The griots, the guardians of memory, preserved the wisdom of the ancestors through oral tradition, recounting heroic deeds and the laws that bound society together. To the Mande, words had power. They could heal, unite, or destroy. The First Kingdoms. Before the rise of the Mali Empire, the region was divided into many small kingdoms, Kangaba, Do, Niani, and Soso among them. Each had its own ruler, alliances, and emblems of power. They traded, fought, and sometimes united against common threats. But in the heart of the Mande, something greater was stirring, a destiny that would unite them all under one name. A prophecy in the wind. The elders told of a prophecy. One day, a child would be born, a child destined to unite the sons of the Mande and to build a kingdom greater than any that had come before. He would come from a royal bloodline of Kangaba, blessed by the spirits of the ancestors and guided by wisdom and strength. As the years passed, kingdoms rose and fell, and the Mande waited for the one who would rise from among them, the one who would forge an empire from the dust of legend. And far away, in the quiet hills of Kangaba, the destiny of Mali was taking shape. The rise of the Kingdom of Mali. As the sun rose over the rolling hills of the Mande, new forces began to shape the destiny of its people. Among the many small kingdoms, one stood out, Kangaba, a modest yet powerful realm ruled by the Kaita dynasty. It was here, in this cradle of legends, that the foundations of the future Mali Empire were laid. The birthplace of a nation. Kangaba was not the richest kingdom, nor the largest, but it was blessed with wise rulers, fertile lands, and a people who valued unity above all else. The Kaita kings ruled with justice, ensuring that trade, faith, and kinship flourished. They were respected not only for their leadership, but for their connection to the ancestors, the spiritual guardians of the Mande. Through trade routes that stretched across the savannas, Kangaba became a center for commerce and diplomacy. Caravans carried gold dust, ivory, and kola nuts northward toward the desert, while salt and textiles flowed south in return. The balance of wealth and trust turned Kangaba into a rising power. A land of many kingdoms. Around Kangaba were kingdoms like Do, Niani, and Soso, each with its own ambitions. For a time, peace prevailed, but the thirst for power soon disrupted the fragile harmony of the Mande. The kingdom of Soso, led by the ambitious Sumaoro Kante, began to expand aggressively, conquering smaller states and enslaving their people. Sumaoro was a fearsome ruler, known both for his brilliance and his cruelty. He was said to possess mystical powers, guarded by fetishes and spirits. One by one, the free kingdoms of the Mande fell under his iron rule. The shadow over the Mande. As Sumaoro's armies advanced, fear spread through the land. The griot songs grew darker. They spoke of lost villages and broken alliances. The once proud kingdoms of the Mande were forced to kneel, their power shattered. Only Kangaba, weakened yet unbroken, still resisted. The Kaita dynasty had lost much: soldiers, land, and pride. But not hope. For among them lived a boy whose destiny had already been whispered by the winds of prophecy. A boy who would one day restore freedom to the Mande and raise the name of Mali above all others. Thus began the dawn of a new era. An era that would see the rise of Sundiata Keita, the Lion King of Mali. The birth of Sundiata Keita. In the wide plains of Kangaba, an extraordinary event was about to change the destiny of the Mande forever. For generations, the elders had spoken of a prophecy that one day a child would be born who would unite the Mande people and break the chains of tyranny. That child was destined to be born in the royal house of the Keita dynasty, King Nare Magan Konate. At that time, the ruler of Kangaba was King Nare Magan Konate, a wise and respected sovereign, loyal to the traditions of his ancestors. Under his reign, the kingdom flourished, yet the king carried one heavy worry. He had not yet fathered an heir of great destiny. One day, diviners came to the royal court from distant lands. They read the stars, cast their cowrie shells, and delivered a mysterious prophecy. "O king, your destiny is great, but your glory shall come from a woman who is not yet among your wives. She will bear a son whose strength will change the fate of the Mande." The king was thoughtful. He knew the spirits of the ancestors had spoken. The arrival of Sogolan Keiju, the buffalo woman. A few moons later, a caravan arrived in Kangaba, led by a neighboring king. Among his servants was a peculiar woman, Sogolan Keiju, known as Sogolan the Buffalo Woman because of her strength and heavy gait. She was not beautiful in the eyes of many, but she possessed a mysterious spiritual power that even the griots respected. Remembering the prophecy, King Nare Magan took her as his wife. The other queens mocked her. Her skin was dark, her voice deep, her movements awkward. But beneath that humble appearance lay a rare and powerful soul. The birth of the promised child. One night, under the silver light of the moon, Sogolan gave birth to a son. He was named Sundiata, meaning the son of the lion. The griots sang of his birth. The lion has roared in the land of Mande. The promised child is born, and even the spirits have bowed before him. But to everyone's shock, the boy could not walk. His legs were weak, without strength. The king's other wives mocked Sogolan and whispered, "So this is the savior of the Mande, a child who cannot even stand?" Yet King Nare Magan believed in the prophecy. He knew that the gods do not lie, and that this boy, fragile though he seemed, carried the strength of destiny within him. The whisper of destiny. Years passed, and Sundiata grew in silence, watching, listening, learning. He spoke little, but his eyes shone with deep intelligence. The griots could sense it. Within this quiet child burned a fire not yet awakened. One day, a diviner whispered to Sogolan, "The child you nurture will rise, and when he stands, the earth itself shall tremble beneath his feet." Thus began the legend of a boy born weak, but destined to rise as the Lion of the Mande, the founder of one of the greatest empires in African history, the Empire of Mali. The difficult childhood of Sundiata Keita. Though born of prophecy, Sundiata Keita's early years were marked by pain, mockery, and struggle. The child destined to unite the Mande was weak, unable to walk, and often humiliated. Yet destiny, as the griots say, never sleeps. A boy who could not walk. Sundiata grew slower than other children. While his brothers ran and played in the courtyards of King Gaba, he sat quietly beside his mother, Sogolon, watching the world through thoughtful eyes. His legs were limp, his steps uncertain, and the other children laughed cruelly at him. Even some of the elders began to whisper, "Can this crippled boy truly be the one the spirit spoke of?" Sogolon, though wounded by their words, never lost faith. She would lift her son every morning and say softly, "My son, you are a lion. The day will come when you will rise, and none shall stand before you." The cruelty of Sassuma Berete. Among those who hated Sogolon most was Sassuma Berete, one of the king's first wives and the mother of Denkaran Tumen, Sundiata's half-brother. Sassuma was proud and ambitious. She wanted her own son to inherit the throne, and she saw Sundiata as a threat, even in his weakness. After the death of King Nere Magan Konate, Sassuma's power grew. She became queen mother and tormented Sogolon and her crippled son, mocking them before the people. "You call him the son of a lion? But he cannot even lift his head. My son Denkaran will rule the Mande, not this crawling child." Sogolon endured in silence, but her heart was heavy. The day of awakening. One day, Sogolon could no longer bear the humiliation. After Sassuma mocked her in public for having no gift to offer, she came home in tears. Her little son looked at her and asked gently, "Mother, why do you cry?" She answered, "Because I have no gift to offer, and because the world laughs at you." Then Sundiata's eyes changed. Something ancient awakened within him. He turned to his mother and said, "Mother, stop crying. Today I will walk." He called for the blacksmiths of the village and ordered them to forge a great iron rod, strong enough to bear the weight of destiny. When they brought it to him, Sundiata grasped it with trembling hands. At first, he struggled. The rod bent. The crowd fell silent. Then, with a roar that echoed through the Mande, Sundiata stood upright for the first time. He lifted the iron rod high, and it broke in two. The people gasped. The griots began to sing. "The lion has arisen. The earth trembles beneath his feet. The child of prophecy walks." The strength of a leader. From that day, Sundiata changed completely. He trained his body, strengthened his legs, and became swift as a gazelle and strong as a lion. He hunted in the savannas, fought alongside the warriors and learned the art of leadership from the elders. Even those who once mocked him now bowed in respect. The prophecy was being fulfilled. The Mande had found its future king. But the shadow of Sumaro Kante, the cruel ruler of Soso, still loomed over the land. And soon, Sundiata's courage would be tested in fire and blood. The war against Salmauro Kante. The prophecy had awakened. Sundiata Keita, once mocked as the crippled child, now stood tall, strong as a lion, wise beyond his years, and destined to lead his people. But across the Mande, a shadow darker than night spread, the tyranny of Salmauro Kante, the sorcerer king of Soso. The tyrant of Soso. Salmauro Kante was no ordinary ruler. He was feared for both his military might and his mystical power. He surrounded himself with charms, fetishes, and spirits of the underworld. Legends say his palace walls were decorated with the skulls of conquered kings, trophies of his endless conquests. He enslaved the free peoples of the Mande, seized their lands, and crushed every rebellion. Under his rule, even the griots sang in whispers, for fear that his magic might strike them dead. The Mande groaned under his domination, and in the hearts of the people, one name began to rise: Sundiata, the lion who would bring back their freedom. The return of the exile. To escape Susuma's hatred, Sundiata and his mother, Sogolan, had gone into exile years earlier. They traveled from kingdom to kingdom, Wagadu, Mema, and others, where Sundiata grew into a man, trained as a warrior, and earned the respect of foreign kings. When Sogolan passed away, Sundiata vowed over her grave, "I will not rest until I free the Mande, and your name, mother, will live forever." Then came the messengers. They brought desperate news. Salmauro had invaded the Mande, burning villages and enslaving its people. The kings of the region called upon Sundiata to return, for only he could unite them. The gathering of the kings. From all corners of the land, the princes and chiefs of the Mande came to meet him. Under the great tree of Kangaba, the ancient seat of the Keita, they pledged allegiance to Sundiata. "We were many, but divided. Now we will fight as one, under the Lion of Mande." Sundiata accepted their oaths. He formed a great army: archers from the forests, horsemen from the savannas, spearmen from the riversides. For the first time, the Mande stood united against their oppressor. The Battle of Karina. The final confrontation came near Karina in 1235. The two armies faced each other beneath a blazing sun. Salmauro's troops draped in black, Sundiata's banners golden, with the symbol of the lion. Salmauro fought with magic, vanishing and reappearing in smoke, his arrows never missing their mark. But Sundiata had learned the secrets of power during his exile. He carried an arrow tipped with the white rooster spur, the only weapon said to pierce Salmauro's magic. When he fired it, it struck the sorcerer's shoulder, breaking his spell. Salmauro fled into the mountains, never to be seen again. The Mande roared in victory. The tyrant was gone. The lion had triumphed in the empire of Mali. The birth of an empire. On that battlefield, surrounded by his warriors and the banners of every Mande kingdom, Sundiata was proclaimed Mansa, King of Kings. He restored the lands, freed the captives, and forged the foundations of what would become the Mali Empire, one of the greatest in African history. And the griots sang, "The lion has conquered the darkness. The sons of Mande are free again. From the ashes of war, the Empire of Mali is born." The unification of the Mande kingdoms. The war was over, and the drums of victory echoed across the valleys of the Mande. Sumaoro Kante was gone, his tyranny broken forever. Now the people turned their eyes to the man who had freed them, Sundiata Keita, the Lion King. But freedom was only the beginning. For to rule a land as vast as the Mande, victory in battle was not enough. Sundiata had to unite hearts, heal wounds, and build something greater than all who came before him, an empire. A land in fragments. The Mande was a mosaic of clans, tribes, and kingdoms, each proud, each with its own customs and leaders. Some were ancient allies of Kangaba, others had once served Sumaoro or fought for their independence. Old rivalries lingered like scars of war. Sundiata understood that force alone could not bring peace. He called the chiefs, elders, and warriors of every kingdom to a great assembly in Kangaba, under the sacred tree of the word. It was there, in a gathering remembered for centuries, that the leaders of the Mande spoke freely and forged unity. The griots sang, recounting the sufferings and victories that had led them there. Sundiata rose before them, tall and noble, his voice carrying like thunder. "Brothers and sisters of the Mande, we have all shed blood for this land. From this day forward, we are one people. No more division, no more fear. The Mande shall be united in peace, in justice, and in strength." And so, the Charter of Gurukan Fuga was born, a sacred code of laws and principles that bound the people together. It declared freedom, equality, and respect among the clans, protecting the weak and guiding the strong. It was one of the earliest constitutions in human history. The spirit of the Charter. The Charter established rights for every citizen, defined the duties of rulers, and promoted tolerance and cooperation among the diverse peoples of the Mande. It also protected the environment, declaring certain lands sacred and forbidding needless destruction of nature. In a world ruled by conquest, the Mali Empire would be built on justice, wisdom, and unity. The griots called it the law of harmony, for it ensured that every voice, great or small, had a place in the new order. The rise of Niani. After the assembly, Sundiata made Niani his capital, a shining city between forest and savanna. There he built his royal palace and established the council of wise men and generals, known as the Gbara. Each province sent representatives, ensuring that every part of the empire had a say in its destiny. From Niani, roads stretched in every direction. Markets flourished, caravans returned, and peace spread like dawn across the land. For the first time, the people of the Mande spoke of themselves as one nation, Mali. The dawn of greatness. Under Sundiata's leadership, the empire began to take shape. The people rebuilt what war had destroyed. Songs of sorrow turned into songs of pride. From the ashes of division rose the golden heart of Africa, the Empire of Mali, bound not only by power, but by law, brotherhood, and spirit. And the griots sang, Sundiata, the Lion of Mande, united the clans and healed the land. Where there was darkness, he brought the sun. Where there was fear, he gave hope. The foundations of power. After uniting the Mande kingdoms under one banner, Sundiata Keita faced the greatest challenge of his reign, transforming a land once torn by war into a lasting empire. Victory in battle had given him glory, but only organization and wisdom could give Mali permanence. The people were free, but freedom needed structure. The land was vast and its riches many. To protect and manage them, Sundiata began to lay the foundations of political order, military strength, and economic stability. The structure of the empire? Sundiata divided the empire into provinces, each ruled by a governor chosen from among the loyal chiefs who had fought by his side. These governors collected tribute, ensured peace, and maintained order. In return, they received protection from the central army and the right to rule their people under Mali's laws. At the heart of the empire stood Niani, the capital, a city of growing wealth and prestige. There, Sundiata presided over the imperial council known as the Gabara, composed of nobles, warriors, religious leaders, and representatives of every major clan. The Gabara advised the emperor and helped maintain justice throughout the realm. This system ensured that Mali was not only powerful, but also balanced, where authority was shared between the ruler and his people. The power of the army. Sundiata understood that an empire's peace must rest on strength. He created a disciplined and loyal army, trained in both strategy and valor. The cavalry, drawn from the best horsemen of the savannas, became the pride of Mali. They could move swiftly across the vast lands, crushing rebellions or protecting traders from raiders. Each province contributed soldiers to this force, forming a united defense. The soldiers swore an oath not only to the Mansa, but to the Mande people, promising to fight for justice and peace. The wealth of the land. The Empire of Mali was blessed with abundance. Its rivers, forests, and mines offered wealth that few lands could rival. Sundiata organized trade and agriculture, ensuring that every region contributed to the empire's prosperity. Gold, found in the mines of Bambouk and Bure, became the heart of Mali's economy. It was traded across the Sahara for salt, horses, textiles, and fine goods from North Africa and beyond. The empire also produced grain, cattle, and cotton, creating a self-sufficient and thriving economy. Caravans traveled safely under the protection of Mali's soldiers, carrying goods to cities like Walata, Timbuktu, and Gao. For the first time, the Mande lands were not only united, they were rich. The spirits of governance. Sundiata ruled with firmness and compassion. He listened to the elders and respected the griots who kept the memory of the people alive. He upheld the charter of Kurukan Fuga, ensuring that no ruler, not even himself, stood above the laws of justice and honor. He often said, "Power is not in domination, but in harmony." A king's greatest strength is his people. Under his leadership, Mali became known not only for its warriors and gold, but for its fairness, wisdom, and peace. Legacy of a builder. By the end of Sundiata's reign, the foundations were complete. The empire was strong, its borders secure, its people proud. Caravans traveled safely under the protection of Mali soldiers, carrying goods to cities like Walata, Timbuktu, and Gao. For the first time, the Mande lands were not only united, they were rich. The prosperity of Mali. After years of war and reconstruction, the Empire of Mali entered a period of peace and abundance. Under the wise leadership of Sunyata Keita, the land began to flourish like never before. Fields once ravaged by battles were green again, markets overflowed with goods, and the songs of the griot spoke not of sorrow but of triumph. The empire had become a symbol of stability and prosperity in West Africa. The unity that Sunyata had forged among the Mande peoples now bore fruit in every corner of his vast dominion. The flourishing of trade. Trade was the bloodline of the empire. The Mali Empire stood at the crossroads of Africa's greatest trade routes, linking the forests of the south with the deserts of the north. Caravans of camels crossed the Sahara carrying salt from Tagaza and goods from North Africa. In return, they brought back Mali's gold, ivory, and kola nuts. The empire's merchants became known for their honesty and skill. Foreign traders from the Maghreb, Egypt, and even the Middle East came to do business under Mali's protection. The wealth that flowed into the empire strengthened its army, expanded its cities, and funded magnificent public works. Niani, the imperial capital, grew into a bustling center of commerce. Markets were filled with goods from distant lands, silks, spices, fine leather, and rare ornaments. Gold dust was measured by weight, and the name of Mali began to reach the ears of distant kingdoms. The strength of agriculture. Sunyata understood that trade alone could not sustain an empire. He encouraged farmers to cultivate the fertile plains along the Niger and its tributaries. Irrigation systems were developed, and the people grew millet, rice, sorghum, and cotton. The empire became self-sufficient in food production. The villages prospered, and the granaries were always full. During times of drought or poor harvest, the emperor distributed food from the royal reserves to prevent famine. This generosity earned Sunyata the love and loyalty of his people. The growth of cities and culture. The peace that followed Sunyata's victories allowed art, music, and learning to thrive. The griot, keepers of memory and tradition, traveled from court to court, preserving the stories of the past and teaching lessons of wisdom and unity. Temples and schools were built. Craftsmen produced tools, weapons, jewelry, and textiles of exceptional quality. Blacksmiths, who were highly respected for their skill and spiritual connection to the earth, played an essential role in both economy and culture. The people of Mali developed a refined sense of social order and respect. Elders were honored, and hospitality was seen as sacred. Travelers were fed and sheltered wherever they went in the empire. The influence of faith. During this time, Islam began to spread throughout the empire, especially among merchants and scholars. While the ancient spiritual traditions of the Mande remained strong, Islam brought new ideas of justice, learning, and trade ethics. Sunyata respected both faiths. He allowed freedom of worship and encouraged harmony between Muslim scholars and traditional priests. This coexistence would later become one of the defining traits of Mali's greatness. A time of peace and balance. The Empire of Mali had grown into a beacon of wealth and stability. Roads were safe, justice was swift, and prosperity reached from the capital to the smallest village. Sunyata's laws and wisdom had created a balance between strength and compassion, between tradition and progress. It was said that a woman could walk alone from one end of the empire to the other, carrying gold without fear of being robbed. Such was the peace that Sunyatsa's rule had brought. The legacy of prosperity. Under Sunyatsa's guidance, Mali was no longer just a kingdom, it had become an empire of prosperity, learning, and order. The foundations he built would endure long after his death, allowing future rulers to expand the empire and make it one of the greatest civilizations in world history. The griot sang, "He conquered not only with the sword, but with wisdom. He built not only walls, but hearts. He gave the Mande not just an empire, but a destiny." The last years of Sundiata Keita. As the years passed, Sundiata Keita grew older, but his wisdom and authority only deepened. His reign had brought peace, unity, and prosperity to the Mande lands. Yet, as with all great rulers, the time came when the Lion King began to reflect on the past, the present, and the uncertain future that lay beyond his own life. The empire at its height. By the final years of Sundiata's reign, the empire of Mali stretched far and wide, from the Atlantic coast in the west to the great bend of the Niger River in the east, and from the forests of the south to the sands of the Sahara. Mali stood as one of the largest and most powerful empires in the world. Its wealth was unmatched. Gold, salt, ivory, and grain flowed freely through its markets. The roads were safe, the laws were respected, and justice was administered in accordance with the principles of the Charter of Kurukana Fuga. Ambassadors from distant lands visited the imperial court of Nyani, bringing gifts and seeking alliances. The name of Sundiata Keita was spoken with admiration across Africa and beyond. Wisdom and reflection. In his later years, Sundiata became less concerned with conquest and more devoted to governance and the preservation of peace. He spent long hours in council with his advisors, ensuring that the empire would remain strong after his death. He visited the provinces, listened to the grievances of his people, and personally resolved disputes among the nobles. His presence inspired loyalty and trust. His words carried the weight of both experience and compassion. Often he reminded his generals and governors, "Empires fall when pride replaces duty. Remember that the crown is not a weapon, but a responsibility." The griots and the memory of the Mande. During these years, the griots played an especially important role. They were the guardians of memory, ensuring that the deeds of the past would never be forgotten. Sundiata called upon Balafaseke Kuyate, his lifelong griot and friend, to record the story of the empire, from the suffering under Sumaoro to the unity of the Mande. Sundiata knew that the empire's greatest strength was not only in its armies or its wealth, but in its story, the shared identity of its people. He once told Balafaseke, "When I am gone, let the children of the Mande remember not my crown, but the path that led to it." The final journey. In his final days, Sundiata withdrew to the sacred lands of Kongaba, where his ancestors had once ruled. The people came from every province to pay homage to him. They brought gifts, songs, and prayers, thanking the king who had given them peace and dignity. It is said that he looked upon his people one last time and declared, "I leave behind not gold, not war, but an empire built on justice. Keep it strong, and it will outlive us all." Soon after, Sundiata Keita passed away, surrounded by his family and the elders of his court. The empire mourned deeply. For 7 days and nights, drums beat softly, and the griots sang of the lion who had brought light to the Mande. The birth of a legend. After his death, Sundiata was not remembered as a mere king, but as a founder, a lawgiver, and a hero. His story became part of the soul of Mali, a legend told by griots from generation to generation. The people believed that his spirit still watched over the empire, guarding it from chaos and guiding its future rulers. And thus, the name of Sundiata Keita became immortal. He was the man who turned division into unity, weakness into strength, and despair into hope. The heirs of Sundiata and the continuation of the empire. After the death of Sundiata Keita, the Empire of Mali entered a new era. The throne of the Lion King was now empty, and the weight of his legacy rested on those who came after him. The unity he had forged, the laws he had written, and the peace he had created had to be maintained by his successors if the empire was to survive. The question of succession. Sundiata's passing left the empire without its unifying figure. Though he had prepared his court and his family for this moment, no successor could easily match his charisma and authority. The throne passed to his son, Mansa Wali Keita, who was chosen by the Council of Elders in accordance with Mande custom. Wali inherited a prosperous and stable empire, but also the immense responsibility of keeping it united. Many local chiefs still held loyalty to Sundiata personally rather than to the imperial crown. Wali's task was to transform that personal devotion into enduring political order. The reign of Mansa Wali Keita. Wali Keita proved to be a capable and wise ruler. He strengthened the administration his father had built and maintained peace throughout the empire. He respected the laws of the Charter of Kurakan Fuga and relied on the Council of the Gabara, preserving the balance between the provinces and the throne. He also promoted trade and diplomacy, ensuring that the gold and salt routes remained safe and profitable. The empire's wealth continued to grow, and its reputation spread further north into North Africa. Under his reign, Mali began to establish diplomatic relations with distant lands. Caravans from North Africa and Arabia carried news of the empire's riches and its just governance. The world was beginning to hear the name of Mali spoken with reverence. The growth of learning and faith. During Wali's reign, Islam gained a stronger foothold in the empire. Muslim scholars and traders brought new knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and literature. The royal court of Niani became a place where scholars from various lands exchanged ideas. Wali himself respected the Islamic faith while also preserving the traditional Mande customs and beliefs. This harmony between two worlds, the old and the new, became one of the strengths of the empire. The challenge of unity. Despite the prosperity of Wali's rule, challenges emerged. Some of the provincial governors, distant from the capital, began to act with growing independence. The vastness of the empire made direct control difficult. To maintain stability, Wali relied on alliances through marriage, shared wealth, and loyal generals. Yet the seeds of future conflicts were already visible, the struggle between central authority and local power. Still, Mali remained strong. The memory of Sundiata's victories and the respect for the Keita name kept the empire united. The people of the Mande still saw themselves as part of one great family, bound by a common destiny. The end of Wali's reign. Mansa Wali ruled for many years with wisdom and restraint. When he died, the empire was still prosperous and at peace. But the absence of a clear line of succession once again brought uncertainty. Different branches of the Keita family claimed the right to rule. For a time, the empire passed through short reigns and internal rivalries. Yet the foundations laid by Sundiata and strengthened by Wali were solid enough to prevent total collapse. Mali endured, waiting for another great leader to arise. The legacy of the early successors. Though none could equal Sundiata's greatness, his early successors succeeded in one vital mission. They preserved the empire. They maintained its borders, its trade routes, and its reputation as a center of justice and wealth. They ensured that the institutions Sundiata had created, the Gabara, the provincial system, and the laws of the Mande Charter, remained alive. The Mali Empire, once born from struggle, now stood as a lasting civilization. Its influence reached across Africa, inspiring neighboring peoples and kingdoms.